All right, here we go. Another hidden hustle with Jamie and Greg on irsportsdailies.com's YouTube channel. Talking all things defense today. I know we've kind of went a little bit heavy on the offense early on, talking about Tyler Buckner. We did a little thing on Lorenzo Styles, and kind of like with Buckner, we kind of went in a little bit in the direction of the offense. And I know everybody is kind of anxiously awaiting the defensive coordinator. Now we'll get into that a little bit here, but mostly we want to kind of talk about the defense overall. First of all, Greg, what was your opinion on year one? Well, we only get year one of Marcus Freeman as a defensive coordinator, but the defense as a whole during kind of Marcus Freeman's year and what you saw from it.
My opinion. First of all, happy Friday, everybody. It's always nice to be on a Friday. My first thoughts were I was actually surprised at where the final numbers ended up. So I think because of the way the season started with, kind of a struggle against Florida State, and especially in the second half, fourth quarter, and then the Toledo game kind of got wayward at the end of the game there in the fourth quarter. I think you kind of had in your mind at that point, like, oh, this defense is going to be maybe like not what it's been, right?
Yeah.
It's going to take an adjustment period. And then over time, things settled in, so when I was preparing for this pod, I was looking at some of the defensive numbers, and it was funny that they gave up the exact same amount of points per game this year as they did in 2020. And obviously the 2020 defense is, playoff defense. They gave up 19.7, points per game. They were very similar from a yards per play standpoint. They were very similar against the run on that standpoint. They ended up setting I think it was a record for sacks in the season.
Yep.
Or no,
41.
Right. That's right. So they set a record for sacks in the season. At the beginning of the year, the havoc rate was way up. It dropped a little bit as the year went on. And, we can get into that. Some of the linebackers got tired and that sort of thing. But so overall, I felt like they started off rough in the beginning. And that was when Freeman had to, get used to his personnel, right? Different than what he had at Cincinnati. He had to make adjustments there, made those adjustments, lost his best player, Kyle Hamilton. But the defense, hung in there. And then, they were aided by the fact that there were some quarterbacks that got hurt and that sort of thing. And they played some worse offenses. But all in all, I felt like, given the fact that you lost Kyle, you lost Maris Leofau, who's going to be a huge player for you, and you still came out with a defense that was, top 20, top 15 in F plus. And so, I felt like from that front, it was a successful season, given the losses and, the turnover with the coaching staff and everything like that.
I think that's a perfect way to put it because, they're 15th in F plus, like you said, 7th in EPA per play, 44th in EPA per rush, 2nd in EPA per pass. And that's expected points allowed per pass. That's way better than you would think, especially when you consider, the secondary didn't have Kyle Hamilton in the second half of the year, like you mentioned, and the rest of the secondary, I would say, you would say is probably the weak point on the defense. 33rd in sack rate, 41 sacks, 39th in stuff rate. This is the thing that really stood out to me. I mean, 11th in points per drive, you mentioned that already. They did a great job, kind of keeping the points down. But 4th in red zone touchdown percentage, tied for 10th in third down defense. Situationally, really, really good. And to me, that's coaching. That's coaching.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's whatever. It's culture and grit and all that kind of stuff. But that's coaching. And that's something that they were typically really good at with Clark Lee as well, right? And that's where you kind of thought maybe there'll be a drop-off in that kind of sense. But there wasn't. There wasn't at all. And I think you mentioned that they lost the two best players. In my opinion, Kyle was obviously the best player. And
right.
Maris, I think, was going to be the second best player on the defense. Anyone who watched him in camp, anyone who had heard anything about what he was doing, he was definitely going to be the best linebacker, biggest playmaker linebacker, a difference maker on third down. So losing him was significant. And then, you obviously had major injuries at linebacker and the depth, issues there. You had also like Drew White was playing hurt pretty much the whole year. You had a lot of stuff. And then, Myron Tagovailoa missed a game. They had some guys miss games too. So it wasn't all smooth sailing for them injury wise. So when you look at it from that perspective, I thought he did a great job, and really, especially like you said, after those first two games, really kind of understanding and adapting, and really even at the start too, I thought right away. So I think this was the big thing with me for the defenses. If you look at what Marcus Freeman ran at Cincinnati, it was a 3-3-5.
Yeah.
And it's funny, right? And whatever, I always bring this up, and I'm sorry, I'm not trying to shade Pete Thamel, but I'm just saying how people don't watch the actual, like, he's a national reporter. His job is to break news. His job isn't to break down X's and O's. But he was talking about, or when people say Marcus Freeman's scheme, this is Marcus Freeman's scheme. Well, Marcus Freeman showed that he doesn't really have a scheme that's just, this is narrowed down into this. This is this tight box of this is what the scheme is.
Right.
He showed that he's going to do whatever it takes that he's got to do for the player. So in Cincinnati, they ran a 3-3-5. That 3-3-5 was essentially, three down linemen, three linebackers. One of the linebackers was a sniper. That's what they called it. That's Andy's version of a rover. So that guy's already kind of a hybrid player. And then they played three corners, not three safeties, three corners, right? So they had nickel. That was base defense for them. And some of that is the league they play in. They play in the AAC. You see a ton. There's like 2 or 3 air raid teams. You're playing a bunch of, you're playing veer and shoot, Art Briles. You're playing all that kind of stuff that the teams are going to spread you out. You're going to see a ton of 10 personnel that, that's, you kind of have to play that way. And they had the corners to play it. Well, Notre Dame didn't have the corners to play that. So Notre Dame wasn't that. So even when, and a lot of people want to say, the dollar scheme, this really wasn't the dollar as in what Cincinnati did, right? They ran Notre Dame, when they ran 3 down, it was the exact same personnel as when they ran 4 down. They just shifted. Typically they would have the rover as an overhang player, maybe the will as an overhang player, sometimes the Viper, who is Foskey or Justin Adenola as the overhang player. And it's quite a bit different than what they did. They never had the 3 corners. And they did, that was one of the problems at the end of the year. They didn't have enough corners to play it. So I think, as we kind of get into it, I don't think that whoever they hire as defensive coordinator, and it's yet to be determined, but whoever that is, they're not coming in to run Marcus Freeman's scheme. They're coming in to run not even their scheme. What Marcus Freeman wants them to come in and say, these are our players. What's going to make us the most successful? What do we got to do for it? And that's the way they're going to play it. That's my opinion of what is going to happen. And from everything we hear, I believe that's what we're going to see with whoever the next defense coordinator is.
Right. And that was the big adjustment. I feel like, I kind of alluded to it earlier, which is like finding out who you have and what you can do. And obviously they figured it out at the, after the first few games and that sort of thing. We'll get into the personnel later. When I watched, I was actually watching a lot of the Cincinnati game back last night, just kind of prepping for, what Notre Dame was doing. And then obviously watching a little bit of our offense Notre Dame's offense against Cincinnati's defense. And you just look at the way Cincinnati's doing it. And I just feel like, I recognize a lot of the formations, but the types of players are different. And I do wonder, given all that they were doing, like, cause I know that you weren't a big fan of Dollar, especially
the way they ran it,
early in the year against like Florida State, it was like really bad. it got a little bit better against like Purdue. Like that was actually a really good game, a really good dollar game, the Purdue game. And then after that, it kind of fell off again. And you're talking about who the overhang players are. It seems like Bertrand is just not real like a fit for that position, right? Like
he is not.
That's not using his skill set to where you want it to be, right? You want him somewhere in the box. You don't want him on the outside. So, I wonder what they'll do with like. And I was
Marist, on the other hand, if that was Marist, I think that's a lot different.
There's Marist there. There's the possibility of, I mean, even someone like Patel, even like getting his athleticism, because they played him at Rover.
He makes sense. You can add him in as a blitzer. It would have made a lot more sense, kind of as he went along. And then I think really, I think that Cincinnati game, like that was a game where, I mean, they obviously understand the scheme pretty well, and they exposed Bertrand in coverage in those situations where he's like that. So I think, yeah, that's the way. If they're going to run it, they can't run it like that. So I don't see whoever comes in, and a lot depends on what happens with some of the young players and how they develop. But I don't see them. I see them still playing 4 down quite a bit. Like they played about 80% of the time they're 4 down. So everyone on the message board complaining that they were playing dollar the whole time. No, they played it 80% of the time. They played 4 down. And I see that probably staying the same. Maybe it changes. I mean, depending if they recruit the kind of way they have at linebacker, they start getting more safeties that they really like. They want to play 3 safeties. I mean, the ideal thing is that you have personnel where you can mix and match there, right? Yeah. And you can play it in a different way. And I know we'll kind of get into the personnel later, so we don't need to dig into that too much right now. But one other thing I want to add about the scheme wise and that change and showed kind of like how adaptable he is. So at Cincinnati, his last year at Cincinnati, the corners, they played, the 2 starting corners, or basically 3 starting corners, but the 2 outside corners were in man coverage 46% and 43% of the time, right? And Cam Hart, Clarence Lewis this year, 33%. So that's quite a big difference, like a third to like almost half for basically their boundary corner last year at Cincinnati. So I mean, that's when you don't have the corners that you can play man to man about like half the time or as much as you want to, it changes how you do things. And I thought he adjusted well to it, but ideally I think he wants to have, Justin Rhett, Christian Gray, who's visiting this weekend. Those are the kind of guys, because they could play physical man coverage corners. Benjamin Morrison, I think, is certainly a guy who's got a potential to Jada Mickey, shorter, smaller guy, but definitely can play man coverage. So I think that could be the direction they end up going in, but I don't think they have the personnel quite yet to do that.
Yeah, and it just kind of like it's tough. It's tough because you look at the season that Clarence Lewis had, and he had a tough year, and but he's playing like the Ahmad Gardner role, right?
Yes.
And Ahmad Gardner is 6'2" or 6'3", like 200 pounds, very long.
He's going to be like a top 20 pick in the draft.
He's a first round pick. And that's that's who you want in that spot. And that makes so much go for their defense specifically. It's where you can put someone like that on the boundary and basically say like you're just going to lock up somebody, right? Yeah. And we saw what he did against Kevin Austin against Notre Dame in that game.
Almost everybody, pretty much.
I mean, look, those two, him and Kobe Bryant, they played really well against Alabama in the. I mean, that's
why they ran the ball.
They are the main reason, and they are the main reason why the score was kept as down as it was, because Alabama didn't get those explosives, right? They had one explosive play that was the long play over the slot, basically the third safety, which was, like their version of the, you know, the 5 and the 3-3-5 or whatever, like that is who it is, right? Their rover is number 20. I don't know his name, but that's their rover. That's where they got on. That's where Alabama got over on, is they got over on that guy. So, you know, getting back to it, when you look at Clarence Lewis, like that's not, he's recruited, and you have to remember too, he's recruited by Clark Lee to play in that scheme. And that scheme is, we're not playing a bunch of press, right? We're playing a lot of off, right? Think about what Julian Love did. Think about what Troy Pride did, right? They're playing off. They're not playing press. And that's what he was recruited to do. He's not recruited to press at the line and then turn and run with someone who is maybe a better athlete than him, right?
Yeah.
So, like you said, before they get that influx of talent, before they get the types of guys that, okay, we recruited them to do this specifically, you know, that's going to be kind of the issue. And especially going forward next year, when you have, you know, you're opening up against Ohio State, where it's like, can we get Ryan Barnes ready to go? You know, can someone like Benjamin Morrison, who's that longer athlete who can turn and run, can he fill a spot like that? Or Jaden Mickey, you know, who you were talking about earlier, and who, you know, Josh Lugg has made, you know, very positive comments about his athleticism. So can those guys kind of get up to speed? Because that's the thing that's going to kind of unlock what this defense, you know, can do.
Yeah. And so, I mean, we'll get back more into the personnel in a second, but we wanted to go into kind of how they were kind of successful. Like, obviously you said top 10 in third down, they had 41 sacks. And I think really as the season went on, and this is what I think is most encouraging about this year, is I thought the players really had a great understanding how they fit in with the pressure packages, like their own fit.
Yeah.
Doing their role within it, because everybody, of course, wants to get a sack. Everyone wants to get a sack. Well, you know what? On this play, your job isn't to take an inside move on this. Your job is to go outside, and maybe that tackle's cheating outside, and you're not going to be able to get around the corner. But you going outside allows for a blitzer to come inside, and you know, and that's kind of how it works. So, so let's go into some of those plays that you had, because I think a lot of them do a really good, you know, show a good example of like kind of what they did to kind of attack protections. This was against Purdue. Obviously, it's a third and 14. And I love this play because it kind of marries the stunts inside,
right?
A great, just an efficiently run stunt, and then I believe this is dime for Notre Dame.
It is dime, yes. Yeah. So they only have the one linebacker. This is Ramon Henderson, Kyle Hamilton, and then you have the 4 down, and you also have MTA playing outside of Foskey as well.
Yeah, and look at the pre-snap look, and you see single high, right? You think maybe this is cover 1, right? And Henderson, as you play it, Henderson drops back, and it morphs into cover 3. Right? Or 3 deep, right? And that's what kind of makes, like, and then quarterback comes back, sees it, he thinks he's cover 1. He's a little bit confused of what he's seeing. That's why he's holding on the ball. So even though the rush didn't hit like super fast, they ran the stunt well enough that it set up that they were going to get there. You know, once, you know, he kind of had a better understanding.
Right. And this is, you know, again, this is a 3rd and 14 play. So they're going to allow this, right? Because you can just rally here. You can rally with Kyle too. So this is one of those situations where, you know, obviously we'll just let it run some more. You know, they get the pressure. I mean, there's Foskey all the way over here. You have MTA here. And here's oh no, I'm sorry. This is Howard Cross. And
that's
this
Howard
is
Cross.
MTA here. Yeah.
MTA.
And this is Jason Adamilola, sorry. So they're getting pressure with just the 4, and it's standard cover 3 in the back. And so, you know, he's got to get out of there. And he flushes to MTA and he just dumps it off, and obviously it's just going to be an incompletion. But
and even if it wasn't, Kyle Hamilton's making that tackle, and whatever, they're punting anyways.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll just see it again. And this is a similar one, but bringing a different pressure up front.
And this is something that you had mentioned to me before, and this is what he did such a good job, and this is why you should get so excited about Isaiah Foskey, and because it's being able to take advantage and getting him into a one-on-one situation.
No, this is the one-on-one. That's against Cincinnati.
This is also a one-on-one situation though,
too,
because he's bringing the nickel,
right?
He's bringing the nickel.
So he's going to bring Bracey here.
Bracey's going to come. Great job by Bracey here. Bracey, I thought, did a really good job this year of kind of disguising, not showing too early. For a guy who didn't play the nickel, at least, on a regular basis, because it was always Crawford. I think he did a really good job this year in the nickel, and especially as a blitzer, timing it up way late in the year. Did an awesome job with it. So, we'll show the rush first, and then we'll get into everything else.
Okay.
So here we go. There you see right at the snap, you see him just moving right before the snap, and look, obviously you see the tackle, but you see what Foskey does here and how he's going out wide. If he comes out and he's just trying to go speed to power, straight bull rush there, he screws that up for Bracey. So he has to do that and run it exactly like that. And even though that's not maybe the most ideal rush for him to win,
right? But
for the defense to win, that's the one, because Bracey's going to come in, and obviously the back doesn't recognize it, and that's a mistake.
Neither does the left guard.
Yeah.
And he takes it right in the face.
And it's almost a pick.
Right. And the reason it's almost a pick is because, so we'll just go back real quick. So you're sitting here and you think, okay, I'm going to get pressure from here. And so you see the safety, you see DJ Brown rotate to the middle, right? So that's probably going to be his read. It's like, I'm just going to look at the safety.
Showing 6 at the line, right? So that's the thing. Yeah.
Right. So you have 4 verticals, right? So if you have vertical, you're going to have a vertical here and a vertical here. He thinks this guy's just going to sneak into the back, and it's like, I'm going to get a quick one right in the seam there. You're showing 6, you end up only rushing 4, you swing around, and you bring here. You're only bringing 4. All the lanes are taken care of, and then you're dropping you're dropping the full 7, right? So Justin Adamalola is going to go to the curl to the flat, and Bertrand's going to take hook to curl. And he can't get it over the top. He gets the pressure here. Xavier Watts doesn't get deep. You think he's going to be in a cover 2, but no, he's just playing the curl situation. So this is eliminated right away and say, okay, I have to go to the short side. I have to take this guy. Now he's throwing it into basically a double team here with the safety over the top. And it almost gets intercepted. And he's lucky that this ball isn't tipped up in the air for Clarence Lewis to pick it off. Right.
Yeah.
We
should mention this is also Georgia Tech as well, and they did a bad job, I think, in general. Like, their line was young, and they had to play a lot of guys. And this is kind of what you got to do. That's
what you do against a team that doesn't know how to handle a 4-man pressure like that,
and a backup quarterback. And so you have to show them different things. And so you're thinking that you're showing 6, you only rush 3 from the 6. And then the 4th guy comes from outside. It's just a really good scheme, and obviously great job in coverage as well. But it's just all around. That's what they did in the second half of the year, just really, really so well. And that's why they went from they were maybe top 40 on 3rd down, and they went to top 10 on 3rd down because of what they did.
Yeah. All right, so here's a similar thing with Foskey. So this is a 1st and 10 play. Notre Dame's down. So this is a huge play in this game. So Notre Dame's down 17-0 here, and Cincinnati's driving. It's 1st and 10. And what you see here, it doesn't show it on this replay, but they had the back set right next to Ritter, and then you show Bertrand coming up into the middle, right? So they show the blitz, and they made it pretty obvious. So they show the blitz. He's going to come right here. So Ritter makes his adjustment, and it says, okay, I'm going to just put you right in the A gap, and you're going to pick this guy up, right? So that makes 5 and 6 to block Notre Dame's Notre Dame here, right? But since you have 3 to the right of the center, then that means that you're going to get Foskey matched up one-on-one against this right tackle.
Yeah.
And so that's how you kind of use the pressure to get Foskey matched one-on-one. Just ignore that because that receiver doesn't even do that. Nice job, Drew Brees.
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah, he doesn't do that.
Yeah, but this is exactly the perfect scenario, though, of like you get guys into, you want to put your best rushers into favorable situations,
right?
Where, and later on when they played Virginia, and Virginia was like, well, we're not going to let Foskey beat us. So they doubled Foskey a lot. Right. And Notre Dame's response was like, well, we're going to flash like he's going to, like he's going to come and then he's going to drop. And then you have 2 guys blocking air.
Free
and then they had numbers the rest of the way. Right. So, and this one is perfect example. Like you said, they have numbers here because of that. And then it's one-on-one with this right tackle and forget it.
And forget it. And it causes the phone, he gets a strip sack. Yeah. And then this is what, that obviously they return it. Drew White picks it up and they return it. And then this is the play that, sets up Notre Dame's first touchdown and gets them back in the game.
If they let them score on this, the game's over.
Right.
So that's what, it was, great job. Great job. And I think that was something that Freeman at Cincinnati definitely showed. And I would say, Clark Lee was a fantastic defense coordinator. I thought a little vanilla with some of the stuff they did pressure-wise. Mm-hmm. And I think Freeman, and whether that's like a combination from getting some stuff from Fickle and sorry to say his name, it's like saying Voldemort, John Tenuta was on the staff there. And I think he had a really good understanding of how to attack protections and how to get favorable matchups. And that's something that why Cincinnati was so successful getting the quarterback. And also why Notre Dame ultimately was, right? Because they did such a good job there. And then ultimately it comes down to that. You're not just getting, you're not scheming up. Guys aren't always going to be unblocked all the time because guys have to win one-on-one matches. And Notre Dame had good enough guys to do that. Yeah. And really, because you say the secondary wasn't that strong, especially when Kyle Hamilton went out. So they had to win up front, and they were winning up front. And that's why they all of a sudden went from a team that, was doing decent rushing the passer, and then all of a sudden took it up another level. Right. So, so I thought we go down personnel wise, look at everything and how we'll go like D-line, linebacker, DB, and kind of look at like every spot. And before we get into that, I just wanted to bring up, I know this was brought up on Twitter beforehand. Poutine, putting gravy on fries is not poutine. That doesn't count as poutine. No one, I'm sorry, our guy Brendan's wife, who thinks gravy on fries, that is not poutine. That's called gravy on fries. There's nothing wrong with fries and gravy. Delicious. It's great.
Yes.
But you got to have cheese curds on there. And then if it's not cheese curds, then it's just cheese fries. And then maybe you're throwing some gravy on some cheese fries. That's all I need to say. I need to get that off my chest. Been waiting.
You're very upset about that. You know what? That was very animated about that.
Well, I think it needed to be said. Needed to I need to lay it down there. My apologies to Brandon's wife, who's very wrong in her food takes.
No, I think it's not. It seems like Brendan is. I've been saying it for years, so it seems like he won something today. So good.
All right, well, Brendan, you tell her. You take it from a Canadian who knows poutine. You got to have the cheese curds on there, or else. I don't know if they offer poutine at Notre Dame Stadium, but they should. They should.
Who
Someone
doesn't?
bring it out to a
Who doesn't
tailgate.
want that? Who doesn't want that?
Bring it out to a tailgate.
No, it
Somebody
sounds-
cook up,
sounds
get a
delicious.
little crock pot with some gravy. Do it. Do it out. I hope we see that. Hope we see that start the season. All right. Well, back to the defense here, but I guess we'll start up front and you know, they're returning Isaiah Foskey. That's the big one, right?
Right.
They lose MTA, lose Kurt Heinisch. Those are the two big ones. You know, so strong side end and nose. That's, you know, where they're replacing starters. What they're going to do there, it's going to be interesting because, so, you know, Riley Mills, you know, Jason Admirola came back. Obviously, that was a big one too. You know, he's still going to start at 3-tech. Riley Mills, I mean, this guy's probably ready to start, you know, at 3-tech. But they have a need at strong side defensive end. You got Nana Safamenta and you got Alex Ahrensberger out there. I mean, neither has shown enough where even as rotational players, they just haven't done enough. They haven't flashed enough, haven't played consistently enough. Like, I know, like, it's just one play, but you look at, remember we highlighted the one play where Ahrensberger got reached in the Fiesta Bowl. And it might not seem like a big deal, but when you only play 10 plays and one of those plays is like, you're the guy who screwed up, I mean, it is a big deal, especially when you go back and look at the tape, right? So you have to have more, you know, you get a little bit more leeway if you're a guy making plays, and they haven't made plays, right? So both those guys really need to have a big spring. But I think what's most likely is Mills probably moves to strong side end. That or it gets interesting because at Viper is a little bit crowded because you have, I mean, obviously you have Foskey. Foskey, you wanted him to play as many plays as possible. You got Justin Admiral, who played really well last year, but, you know, by far his best season, especially rushing the passer. Beginning of the season, I didn't think he played very well versus a run, but got better. I think I would like to see maybe Justin Admiral move back to strong side. He played there in 2020. One, because I think if depending on what they do with Mills, he might have a chance to start, so might have the chance to play more. The other thing is that Jordan Patel, who's sitting there, I mean, Jordan Patel, he's got to play.
Yeah,
he's got to play. He's
the biggest wild card in defense, honestly.
Yeah, and
they really need to get something out of him.
And out of the guys who didn't play regularly, he up front, he's by far the highest ceiling. So he obviously has to have a big spring, but I'm really interested to kind of see what they do there. Is that how you kind of see playing out? What do you like? Do you think Mills being there, like full time? Obviously, Mills inside rushing on third down, I think that's what's going to happen. But
yeah,
do you think like him playing that kind of strong side end in base is the way to go?
Yeah, so it feels like that's the natural progression. Like, I feel like even from a size standpoint, I feel like moving him there is kind of where this has all been leading to, right? It feels like his more natural position. I believe he played that spot when MTA was out against Virginia, and he had a big game where he had, you know, a couple sacks, I think it was.
He did. But the one thing I'll say about that, because people were like, man, get this guy on the strong side. And they did move him there later, like to back up later on. But his production came from when he was rushing inside on third down.
Oh, got it. Yeah. Okay. All right.
But he was good. He was good. Yeah.
Yeah. From a pass rush standpoint. And plus, like, I think you do want the size out there, especially against the run, right? Because I think MTA was a really good player against the run from that spot. And I feel like with Nana and Ahrensberger, I don't know. Like, Ahrensberger is like a very big guy, like tall. He doesn't feel like very, like, on the play we showed, like he got moved pretty easily, right? And
he's got to get stronger.
He's got to get stronger. And I feel like Nana is not a big enough player to be like, okay, he's our guy. Like he's our answer at strong side, right? I feel like he's in a role like he had. He can obviously make plays, right? He made a couple plays last year, but he also got, I don't want to say exposed, but it's like, he's not a big guy, right? So he can get manhandled a little bit.
I think he's just too inconsistent right
Yeah.
now. Because you'll watch him if you just watch him and just watch the plays he's in the game. You'll say 5 plays, you'll be like, "Oh, Nana's going to be a player,"
Yeah.
and say he really like his get off, his hand placement, everything you see there, and you like it. And then you see 5 more plays, and you're like, "Man, I don't know how this guy's in the rotation." Like there's too much variance there between like the good Nana and the bad Nana. And I understand, like, guys got to develop and all that. And he did miss a significant chunk of his second season with injury. At the same time, this is going to be his 4th year coming up. It's kind of now or never. And Aaronsburg is going to be 3rd year. But also, you look at it, Tyson Ford, Aiden Gobera, those guys are there. I think they'll pass those guys if they don't show anything. They have to show something now, right? So that's kind of what it comes down to for me.
Yeah, agree. Because you have to, like you said, it's one thing to show flashes at times, right? And some players do that, and that's fine enough. But eventually, as you get older, you do have to start to be more consistent with that, because as you said, there's people coming in, and it's like, oh, man, I want to see their flashes. That's how it happens, right? Like you get someone, it's like, I want to see their flashes, and then those flashes become, are they going to be consistent, right? The coaches are always looking for something that they can count on, right? So when you're young, it's like, okay, the flashes are good, right? We love the flashes. As you get older, and those guys are going into their junior year now. As you get older, it's like, hey, I need to be able to count on this.
Yeah.
Like I need to be able to know that this is what's going to happen. So that's kind of where that goes. And since we're talking about the front, let's post this question from Nick Henriksen about Foskey. Do you think Foskey will drop into coverage much less in 2022?
I would say, I don't know about much less. I think every time people see him drop into coverage, people are like, that's too many, right?
Right.
So I would say I agree with that. He should be, not that he's not capable, but if he's dropping more than a couple times a game, and I understand it adds to your defense if you have a guy like that who can do stuff, and then they don't know where it's coming, where rush is coming from, all that. That's great, right? That's great. Him peeling off against the back, like I was watching some. Don't ask me why I was watching Florida State 2 weeks ago, but I was watching the Florida State game 2 weeks ago, and he was peeling off and picking up the back, and like Florida State has some like athletic backs, and he was like running with them on wheel route. It was impressive. It was very impressive. So, and I think, he rushed 90% of the time during pass plays, he rushed. And that was via PFF, right? So, 10% of the time he dropped, and you say, yeah, maybe that's too many. But really, 9 out of 10 times, that's still pretty good, right? Like if he's rushing all the time, like I would just say, and it's my one beef with Mike Elston in terms of his rotations. There's a lot of times situationally where I'm like, why aren't the ones out? Why isn't Foskey out here? And that happened at the end of, the second end of the first half and thing. But that's just not the only time. There's other times too, right? And I understand it's a hard balance to be able to do that. And and I've done that as a player where I was like a rotation guy, and I'm like, man, what I'm taking out here, like it's 3rd down, give me a chance, man. I want to, and same thing as a coach, like I'm like, I want to give these guys a chance, but I'm like, we need a good rush here, so I got to get this guy back out. So it's hard, you have to kind of manage it, but I think that's the main thing I want to see is like him in all those kind of situations, like as many situations as possible, rushing the passer. I'm definitely all for that.
Yeah, I feel like dropping defensive linemen into coverage is kind of like almost running a reverse or something on offense. It's like, it's good when it works. You want it to work, right? And I think that's part of the the trick with being a defensive coordinator is like knowing when to use it, when to bring it out, and when to drop a guy, because obviously you want it to be where, you know, it's a disguise and maybe they throw it right to you or something like that, right? And obviously they run it a lot more frequently than you would a reverse or something like that. But it's like, that's one of the things. It's like you could do it, but if you're giving up a bunch of completions and your best pass rushers in coverage, like that's when people are like, hey, maybe stop doing that.
Yeah. And some guys are comfortable doing it and other guys aren't. Like I thought Justin Adderall looked totally uncomfortable every time he dropped back. Botello, I think, he would kind of undisciplined, but he looked comfortable, right? So yeah, like I mean, I think it's going to stay part of the defense no matter who's the defensive coordinator, but I think it's something that I would like to see a little bit less of. Okay, before we move off the D-line though, replacing Kurt Heinisch. So, Cross. Okay, Howard Cross, I think, is a 3-tech. The problem is they have too many 3-techs. So, and they didn't feel good enough about the nose guard. So he was the backup nose guard. And that's what I wonder with Al Washington when he comes in and he's going to be like, this guy's 280 and he's going to be our starting nose guard. Like, I wonder if they're going to mess with that. I wonder if they're going to be like, I know Jacob Lacey lost weight and then, some of that was he had the shoulder thing. Some of that was on purpose, because here's a tip for everybody. For all the fullbacks want to be running backs, right? All the O linemen want to be tight ends, right? All the tight ends want to be receivers. Well, all the nose guards want to be 3-techs, and all the 3-techs want to be D ends. That's how it works, right? All the D ends want to play linebacker. That's why they're like dropping into coverage. Heck yeah, right? All the linebackers want to play safety. That's just how it is, right? Like guys always think they can do all this other stuff, and that happens, right? So so I'm just telling you as experience, like as a guy, I had to play undersized nose for a very short period of time. It sucks. It's a brutal job. And not to say that Howard Cross couldn't do it, but I don't know if he's going to be like the starter. But then I might have said that about Kurt Heinisch a few years ago too. And then he ended up being a pretty good player though. So,
so then that tells me like maybe this is a really big offseason for Aiden Keanu-Aina.
I think it is. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I think it's big for him. I think it's big for Gabriel Rubio.
Yeah.
That's
a top 150 player, right? Top 120.
And those guys are bigger than both, Lacey and Cross. Yeah. And I think both, obviously Cross and Lacey played nose in that Wisconsin game and were terrific in that game. Awesome in that game. So maybe they'll just be like a great combo there and that'll kind of handle it all. But that is definitely a spot that I'm going to be kind of watching going into, and, we'll see with those young guys. Linebacker, I think it's a little bit easier because I think, Bo Bauer's back at Mike. So that's exciting for him. I think he's going to, he'll have a chance to start, but Bertrand, I would have to assume that he's going to be moved back to Mike. So that's going to be a competition there. And I think that's a better fit for him. You kind of forget because he, missed plays where, he had the missed tackles. Obviously, you always remember the last game, and yet the last game he wasn't, very good, in terms of missing some tackles in space. He had 101 tackles for a guy who wasn't supposed to start and wasn't supposed to play Will. So I think he could have a really big jump. And not that I don't think that Bo Bauer might be the guy who ends up starting there, but Bo Bauer also does a really good job in sub packages. And if he's still that, I think that's still great there.
Yeah. So at Will, I assume you want Maris.
Maris is going to be the starter unless something. Yeah. And that's what you think is going to happen. And then I think you really hope that Coley's going to make a jump. What will be interesting is what they do with Jack Kaiser, because I think he's obviously body type wise, he's more suited to play inside linebacker. And I think if you played Mike, you just all of a sudden become that much more athletic at Mike. Right. So, I like the idea of him at Mike, Marist at Will, but then who's going to play Rover? That's the thing. Cause obviously Pryor's gone, Moala. Mala, I think, is the grad transfer, but I'd be shocked if he ever plays again. I feel bad
Yeah.
for him.
Well, I mean, just the double Achilles. It's brutal.
Yeah. But Snead is coming in, and so is Ziegler. We should mention all the linebackers come in. So Junior Tui Halamaka is coming in as an early enrollee. So is Josh Burnham. I mean, I actually think Junior is probably the guy who's closest to being ready to play if like physically and just like instinctually, I think he could maybe get in the mix, but I doubt it. Like maybe crack a 2 deep here or something if they need him in a pinch or something, but we'll see. I think Burnham still just physical development. Is he going to play Viper? We'll see, but I'm very, very high on his future, which is why I had him rated him so high. Snead, they came up with some weights and he's like basically like 200 pounds.
Right. Yeah.
Which is, I'm not shocked at all based on looking at him.
Mm-hmm.
And he's definitely a rover. Is he good enough to play as a true freshman as a rover? I mean, he's physically talented enough. I don't know if he's going to know everything he needs to know there. That'll be interesting. And then obviously Nolan Ziegler, I think, is probably one of these guys who, if he wasn't in the class there, if they didn't have Snead in the class, you'd be like, whoa, Ziegler, like, I think he's going to be a pretty good player at rover. Well, what's going to happen there is like, he ever going to play over Snead? I don't know. Right. Like maybe he could. I think he's a pretty good football player and a good athlete. So we'll see there. But then, so that's why if you move Kaiser, what are you going to do there? And this is what I wanted to bring up to you, Greg. And I brought up in like 6 thoughts a few weeks ago on ISD. But especially because they got Brandon Joseph at safety.
Yeah.
And so now they have Joseph. They have DJ Brown, Houston Griffith, experience. Obviously, you're not too high on the upside there, but they have experience. They're going to play.
Yeah.
Ramon Henderson, can't wait to see more. Very excited to see him this spring. X Watts, want to see more of him too. Think he could be a pretty good safety. But I think he could be a pretty good rover. And he was on the depth chart at rover, worked mostly at safety. I think he's intriguing because of kind of what he showed like near the line of scrimmage, making tackles on the perimeter. I think he could be a really good blitzer. I'm kind of excited to see if they move him because I kind of think he could be the starting rover if they ended up moving Jack Kaiser inside. So I don't know. What do you think of that? Do you think that's too wild of an idea to do that? Do you want to see X Watts kind of get a shot at safety first? What do you think there?
If it was me, I would Kaiser would be moved because like, look, let's get all these guys in the best spot for them because you have so many, right? And it's like, to me, it's not a question of like, oh, we got to get the best 3. I feel like the best 3 is like a moving target in this situation because you have so many players and you have so many schemes and so many like different formations that Notre Dame can use, right? Like you have the dime, you have nickel, you have dollar, you have all these different formations that you can use. Like to me, there is no best 3, right? There is, that Marist needs to play. Like he was going to be a star last year.
Yep.
So that's just, he needs to be out there, period. Right. Bertrand, Bauer, Kaiser have all played well enough to where, as you say, okay, they need to get time somewhere, but we need to find their best spot. We need to get the best versions of those guys because I don't think that Bertrand was the best version of what he can be last year because of where he was asked to play. He was asked to be Marist, and Marist is built totally different. They have different skill sets. So, and now you have Prince Collie, who's closer to Marist, right? So that seems to make sense to me, right? Where you have Marist there and you have Prince Collie there. It's like, okay, let's make the will for those 2 guys. And we know Bertrand knows it. So, okay, Bertrand knows it. So in a pinch, he can play it. But let's build the will around those 2 players right now. Is like Marist and Collie. I would put Kaiser at Mike. I would put Bertrand at Mike, and I would put Bauer at Mike. And it's like, and I know you have Junior sitting there, but that's what I would do because it's like you need to find the best guy at that position and go from there. And at rover, look, I don't if they're gonna move Riley Mills to strong side end, okay. You have Foskey, who's obviously gonna be Viper. You have Justin Adamalola, who like why back him up with Riley Mills or something like that? I don't think you're gonna do that. Why back him, put him behind somebody, or why put him on a timeshare with Riley Mills? I think they'll keep him there. I think they'll keep him at Viper. Put Jordan Patel at Rover. And then we play a team that wants to run the ball at us. Let's put Jordan Patel out there. We play a team that wants to throw the ball a lot more. Let's put Watts out there. To me, Watts, every time you put him in the game, he's around the ball. Every time you put him in the game, he's making a tackle somewhere. I mean, his production, it was like one tackle for every like 4 plays he was in the game. It was crazy when they put him in, right? And he had never played before. To me, you put him out there. It's almost like co-starters, right? You're going to play him at Rover.
A little bit what they did with Pryor this year.
A little bit like that. Yeah, a little bit like that. And you put him out there. I think Botelho has to play. I think that you have to get Watts out there as well. I think that needs to be their position. And they have Brian Mason, who is the special teams guy, but he worked specifically with that position. And when you have 2 guys who Jordan Botelho just started learning the position, you know, at the end of the year last year, you have Watts, who hasn't really played a ton of defense. You have a dedicated coach to that position. I say put those 2 guys there, make that theirs, and then you go from there because you have so many options. Last year, guys are getting hurt, so it's like, okay, we need to find our best 3, right? We need to find our best. This year, you have so many options. You have to say, okay, there is no best 3. We need to put guys in the best spot for them and then go from there.
And I think one thing too is I think it's a good point where I think you could see them kind of like Culley. I think, you know, obviously worked at Rover before he kind of got forced to Will last year. Like if he's one of the best guys and you don't want to take Maris off the field that much, like to me, that's would be interesting there too. Yeah. And then you obviously you see where your kind of depth is at Will too. So I think they're in a really good spot. I think they're gonna be good at linebacker. I think they're gonna be better at linebacker this year than they were last year. I think quite a bit better. So you know, so because I think like guys like Kaiser and Bertrand will be better. I think Maris will immediately. I think Culley's the guy to watch who could really, really make a jump up, and we'll see with some of the young guys too. And then obviously Bauer, you know, you're going to get a baseline of good, you know, of what he can do. So
let's get to this question from Brennan Very Piety. By Clemson, what is your ideal set of starters at linebacker? Who do you expect to start the year?
You see, I mean, I just was praising Brendan for this, but I hate questions like this because it's like by Clemson, and it's not whatever. And I don't mean any offense to Brendan, but I just mean because, like, let us get through the spring first, because I could say right now and just be like, well, it's obviously Kaiser at Mike and Marist at Will, and then, you know, I want Snead there at Clemson. It's like, I have no idea if Snead is going to come in and then they're going to be like, man, this guy, he's just not close. We need a ton. He needs a ton of work, or if they're even going to move Jack Kaiser inside to Mike. Right. So I think we kind of have to see what they're going to do, you know, with Marcus Freeman, the new DC, Brian Mason, like you said, like, what are they going to do there in terms of how do they think those personnel? Because, that I think is going to be the most interesting part of it, because where we see it right now, or where guys are kind of penciled in from last year, might not be where, because if you would have said last year, no one would have said, well, you know, Jack Kaiser at Rover, because everyone's like, well, Jack Kaiser, a lot of people thought Jack Kaiser was like, man, this guy's going to start at Will. Like they thought that, right? And obviously just based off of just a very small sample size, but they were excited about him there. I mean, he was at Rover the whole year. Didn't do so. You just don't know. So, you know, what's ideal for that? I mean, I don't even know.
Yeah, I would say just my hypothetical. I would want Marist, either Bertrand or Kaiser at Mike, and then Patel at Rover with Watts. I mean, against Clemson, I probably want Watts, but it's fine.
I think Patel's got to be on the ball all the time. I just want to see him on the ball.
More. Viper.
I want to see him playing Viper. But,
okay.
But I mean, we'll see. I don't know. He might come out and he might be the first guy out at Rover in spring. Who knows? All right. So we'll hit DB real quick and then we'll get into, and if anyone's got questions, throw them up there. I see we got a couple more we'll get into.
Them up. Yeah.
Yeah. So at corner, you got Cam Hart and Clarence Lewis back, Tariq Bracy. I'm sure he's in school. Maybe I'm not sure he's in school. I don't know. I think he's in school.
I think he is too. I think I saw that,
but
might be wrong.
And maybe he just was the guy who's like, I'm not making any announcements because he doesn't have to make an announcement. Like none of these guys were forced to say, I'm back or whatever. Like Braden Lindsay didn't say I have to be back. He could have just been like, what? I'm back. Did I need to say anything? Like a lot of guys just did it, and cool that they did. That's fine. But they didn't need to. So maybe he will be back, maybe he won't. But if he is, that's the top 3 corners from last year. If he's not, nickel is a question. I mean, boundary is a big question, and that's Clarence Lewis. Because if maybe it is as simple as, well, Cam Hart wasn't ready to play boundary last year. That's why we moved him. And he was good, very good in his first year at field. But now we think he can make the move to boundary. And then we'll switch. We move Lewis back to field. Lewis is a better fit at field. Had a much better season as a freshman there. A reminder that Clarence Lewis probably shouldn't even been playing as a freshman or a sophomore. He's playing because Notre Dame doesn't have anybody else. So I know everybody wants to just be like, man, this guy sucks, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's not his fault that he was out there, to the point where they didn't recruit well enough to get guys out there. So guys like Isaiah Rutherford didn't turn out, right? So they needed him. And so with him, I think it's going to be interesting. Are they going to move him? Are they going to move Hart to the boundary? Is Ryan Barnes all of a sudden going to take like a big jump? Philip Riley? There's a lot of, obviously there's young guys coming into, there's Bellamy, who I think he's 170 pounds. I don't think he's going to play in year one. So I think we could probably, and is he going to be a long-term safety? I don't know. Jaden Mickey, I think, is going to play year one. Where's he going to play? What's his best spot? I think he's going to play. If Bracy's out, I think he's the starting nickel. I think he's one of these guys who's going to be ready, smart enough, perfect for that role. I would ask how you see it's playing out, but I have no idea how it's going to play out. Like, what do you think they should do? What are you hoping for there?
I think you put Cam to the boundary. He has to do it. He was the best corner last year. You got to put him there. He has the size for it too. That's the other part of it. It's like he has that stature, and I think he's ready to make that jump. He needs to be the man at corner. I think he can have the talent. I think he was literally inches away from having like a special season last year. I mean, you go over and watch the games, like a lot of the plays that are the receptions that he's giving up, he's right there. It's just, the receiver makes a really strong catch on a contested catch or the ball pops up or something like that. He was very close to having a very special season last year from a breakup standpoint, just didn't happen. But, he's given up 50% completions on something like 60 something passes. Right. So, and the yards per attempt is in the 5s. So he needs to be that guy. I think you put him at the boundary, you put Ryan Barnes at the boundary and say, hey, you're going to sit, you're going to play behind Cam. And, it's going to be your spot because Cam's going to be moving on. So it's like you groom him for that. I think you do move Clarence Lewis back to the field. For the reasons you stated, I thought that was well put. I think Mickey needs to go to the field. I think I think Riley feels like a nickel guy too. Like if Bracey moves on, I do think it's a Riley Mickey battle there. And I agree with you. Like I think Jaden Mickey is coming in ready to play. Out of all of them, I feel like he's ready to play. I don't think Benjamin Morrison's an early enrollee, right?
He's not.
He's not. Yeah. So it's I don't know where he fits. I mean, I guess you just see where is Ryan Barnes?
See how
where's Ryan Barnes?
Where you see where everyone fits in the spring, and then he kind of goes from there,
and then you put him somewhere.
Yeah.
So there's that. Chance Tucker, I feel like is a field player too.
Chance Tucker needs to get bigger. He needs to get bigger and stronger.
Yeah,
I think that's important. So, I mean, really big year for the young corners. I mean, they're going to play Ohio State.
It's a huge offseason. I mean, it's like that. We need to. Those guys really need to make some strides because you need more options there, right? It can't just be okay. We have, Cam Hart, Clarence Lewis, and Tariq Bracey, right? Because the level of play needs to increase. And I'll just put this up from Tom A, who said, "Well, Freeman make sure." New DC address obvious defensive back weakness, i.e. Clarence Lewis. We've been deficient in this area for quite a while. It obviously Clarence Lewis has taken a bunch of shots over the last few games because of what happened.
How's the new Bowl. DC's backpedal? Because he's gonna just are they gonna just get some I
think the point is like the fact is that the position needs to get better. Right. And whether it's Lewis or whether it's someone
no one disputes it that.
Right. Yeah. Right. So that needs to improve somewhere. And so we'll see how that goes. The point is, it's like that they have a bunch of young guys who they brought in. You have Mickey, you have Benjamin Morrison, you have Barnes, Tucker, Riley. Let's go.
Yeah.
Like fun. Like you have everyone likes Mike Mickens. So that's okay. Let's develop these guys and let's get going.
Yeah. And I will say too, like a guy like Sauce Gardner, no one thought much of him before when he was being recruited and whatever. So you have to say, like, are any of these guys going to kind of develop into something? And really, they got to kind of develop now.
Yeah.
They got to kind of develop now because I think, with how they've recruited in this year with the guys they bring it in with, Morrison and Mickey specifically, and then Rhett, maybe Christian Gray if they get him in the fold. Hopefully they get one or two more corners in the next one. So, and I think those guys are going to come in with a higher pedigree than the other guys. So, and I think that's really what is needed for them to go from we mentioned their top 15 and F plus. They want to be top 5. The corner play's got to be better. I mean, defensive back play in general. And then I guess we'll lead that into safety. And I think, Brandon Joseph, obviously big pickup.
Yeah.
Big pickup. Got to tackle better. We kind of went into that. Definitely has to tackle better. But certainly 9 interceptions 2 years. I mean, you'll take it. You'll definitely take that. Hopefully he comes in, and I think he's got a chance to make a big impact. So I would be surprised if he's not one of the starters.
And you know what? You sold me on the new DC really hurting things at Northwestern. I mean, that seems to have played a big role in how the whole defense kind of operated there. So you sold me on that. I that makes a lot of sense to me. So I'm expecting a lot of things from Brandon Joseph. And
then I think, ideally you want to have 3 or 4 safeties that play. I mean, Houston Griffith, it's the same thing. I think Houston Griffith was solid last year, actually. It's because whenever he makes a bad play, it stands out because he never makes a good play, a play enough. I mean, he doesn't find the football, just can't find the football. That's his thing. And so he's when they say in baseball, replacement player, WAR or whatever, right? Wins above replacement. He is the replacement player. That's who he is. So,
and when he did his interview, there was some self-awareness there where it's like, hey, I need to make more plays. So it's like, look, that's good, right? You know the deficiency, so let's go.
Yeah. So I mean, not many guys who have played kind of as much as him make a jump from fourth to fifth year. So I wouldn't expect it. I think DJ Brown is solid. Again, people remember the last game. They remember the last two plays. The problem is I just don't think DJ Brown is fast enough. He can't. So when he plays single high, he knows where to go. He just doesn't have, like, sometimes you can be slow, but you maybe have just a lead instinct so then you can be there a half step quicker and make a play. And then sometimes you're just a guy who has just like, pretty good recognition, but you're not fast enough. And that to me is why he's kind of like, he can't be a single high, maybe split the field, but he can't be a single high guy. So, and I think Joseph will probably be the single high anyways, if they play it that way. And it'll be interesting to kind of see.
And Ramon Henderson too, like that.
Ramon Henderson as well. And I think that's the key, because I think I think most people are going into the spring hoping that Henderson, Watts, both those guys take a big jump. And then you're like, whoa, now we're cooking with gas because we got these guys and Brandon Joseph. Because, and I mean no offense to Brown and Griffith. It's just that these guys are upperclassmen. You've kind of seen where they are. I don't know. Have they hit their ceiling? My guess is probably pretty close. So
this is what I will say for those two is, like, when you look at Joseph and you look at Henderson and you look at Watts, like, there is a difference in athleticism that allows you to do more things at the position. Yeah. And that just makes a huge difference, right?
That Watts interception in Virginia, Exhibit A. Yeah.
Henderson.
Sorry. Excuse me.
And that's honestly, that's like a really great play that a lot of I don't know that anyone else besides Kyle in the secondary at safety makes that play.
No one at Notre Dame has, than that's like Harrison Smith, Kyle Hamilton, Ramon Henderson, only three guys in last decade.
It's a really great play. So, and it's just like athleticism, right? And that's what is the difference. And if you have the athleticism plus assignment correct, then that makes it, to where it's like, those are the guys that are going to be out there. I think for Brown, he tackled so much better all year, to where I feel like the anomaly is what happened in the Fiesta Bowl. I don't want to say I'm going to ignore it or whatever, but I just think that's not what he's going to be on a game-to-game basis. So I think that's where his value is. So for Harrison, it's just about, or for Houston, it's about, where is my what is the thing that I bring that is, giving that value to the defense, right? It's not enough to say, like, I know where to be and I know what I'm supposed to do. And it's not that it's nothing, right? It's not that that's nothing, but the other guys are bringing more. So, like, what are you bringing that adds value to what the defense is? And so that's his thing. It's right. It's not that he can't do it in a vacuum. It's like, what can Houston Griffith do? He knows where he's supposed to be. I don't know that he's ever had a bust, right? I don't know that
there's ever been a play, but he gets beat, but it's not like
beat. Yeah, I'm not busting.
Making a lot of mental mistakes. No.
I'm not turning a guy loose.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's there's something to be said for that. But at the same time, the other guys are bringing more, so he's just got to get to that point.
Yeah. And I think another thing that intrigues me about Henderson too is that I think, whenever you're going to play some of these teams with really good tight ends, I think he's kind of got the length, kind of show that he can kind of match up some of these tight ends, not be exactly like what Hamilton did, but some of that.
Yeah.
And I think that's that there's definitely value there. Right. I mean, obviously it hurts not having a Kyle Hamilton. I don't need to tell you that, Greg.
So. It's too soon. I can't.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I don't know if we got any more questions, but I mean, we've gone long enough anyways, but
Yeah, we're good.
yeah. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Hope you guys enjoyed that, talking the defense, talk a little scheme. I know more people are like, want to know about the defensive coordinator. I mean, the reality is what everyone has heard and read about the defensive coordinator stuff. That's what we know right now.
Yeah, we got to wait for junior day to end. Once that gets off, then we'll see something.
I mean, also too, like, as everybody knows, Al Golden, they're playing in the playoffs. I think that if, hopefully for Matt Freeman's sake, the Bengals go to the Super Bowl, but if they don't, I think that, opens things up for him and see what happens with there. And, we'll see what's happens with some of the other candidates there too. So
if you're listening for the first time, by the way, or viewing, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, so we can get more and more people getting eyes on us, and we can, bring this to more people, more eyes.
Yeah. Every little bit helps. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next week. We're talking more Irish football.